There's a moment at the end of every day that we too often overlook. It's not when the work stops or when we finally turn off the screen or even when our head hits the pillow. It's that quiet space, just a few seconds long, when the world around us is slowing down, but our minds are still racing. In that moment, we're at a crossroads. We can either carry the chaos of the day into the night, or we can pause and do something powerful. Start with stillness. Stillness isn't about doing nothing. It's about choosing to do something that most people skip, something successful people understand instinctively. It's the decision to take control of the transition between day and night, between effort and rest, between output and renewal. And that moment of transition, when done right, becomes a secret advantage. Because here's what we don't talk about enough. The day doesn't truly end when the clock streaks midnight or when the task list is done. It ends when we decide it ends. And if we don't create that line in the sand, if we don't intentionally shift gears, our minds stay stuck in work mode, decision mode, survival mode. We go to sleep with tension in our shoulders, tightness in our chest, and 1,000 browser tabs still open in our head. That's not rest. That's a delayed collapse. Successful people know that rest is not a reward for finishing the day. It's a responsibility. Not just for their health, but for their performance, their clarity, and their relationships. And so they build rituals of stillness. They don't fall asleep with their phone in their hand. They don't sprint to the finish line of the day and crash into bed. They land the day with grace. Now, this doesn't mean they spend 2 hours meditating by candlelight while listening to whale sounds. That's not realistic for most of us, and that's the point. The most powerful nighttime routines aren't elaborate. They're intentional. They're human. They're rooted in something we've forgotten how to prioritize: presence. Presence is the rarest currency in a world of endless distraction. And the people we admire, those who lead with impact, who live with clarity, who build trust effortlessly, they've learned to be present when it matters most. And that includes the end of the day. They choose to start their evening with a moment of stillness because they understand that how you end your day shapes how you begin the next. It might be as simple as closing the laptop, stepping outside, and taking 5 deep breaths. It might be writing one line in a journal that says, here's what I noticed today. It might be sitting with a partner, a child, or even just themselves and saying, I'm here, I'm done, let's just be. And if that sounds too soft or sentimental, consider this. Every performance-driven field, sports, business, military, art, respects the power of the reset. Whether it's athletes cooling down, musicians tuning their instruments, or leaders debriefing after a mission, the best performers don't just jump from one thing to the next. They pause, they reflect, they breathe. That pause is not optional. Now imagine what would happen if we applied that same principle to our own lives. Imagine ending your day not in a haze of social media or emails, but with a conscious breath and a mental check-in. Not because it's trendy, not because some influencer said it helps your aura, but because your mind deserves closure, because your energy deserves to be protected, because your future deserves the best of you, not the leftovers of your overstimulated mind. So there's a quiet kind of confidence that comes from being able to say, I've done enough for today. Not because everything is finished, but because you are finished. That's what stillness offers. A boundary, a pause, a gentle reminder that your worth is not tied to your productivity, that you can step away, recharge, and return stronger. And it's not always easy. We live in a culture that celebrates hustle and treats exhaustion like a badge of honor. We're told that if we're not doing something, we're falling behind. That if we stop moving, we lose. But that's not leadership. That's burnout dressed up as ambition. It's the people who rise above, who lead teams, families, and companies with clarity and strength. They've learned a different truth. They know that stillness is not the opposite of progress, it's the beginning of progress. It's where we hear our own thoughts, it's where intuition speaks, it's where creativity lives. You don't need an app or subscription to build stillness into your night. You just need to care enough about your mind to listen to it. To say, hey, I see you. I know today was a lot. Let's land gently. Successful people don't stumble into clarity. They cultivate it. And it begins with how they close their day. They're not perfect. They have nights where everything feels messy and rushed too. But they come back to the habit of presence. They start again. Because they know that one still moment can shift everything. And that's the invitation. Not to overhaul your life overnight, but to reclaim the end of your day. To carve out a few minutes of stillness that belong to no one but you. A small ritual that reminds you you're not just what you do, you're also who you are when you stop doing. So tonight, before you collapse into bed or scroll through just one more reel, pause, breathe. Put your hand on your heart and ask yourself, did I live today with purpose? Not perfection, not productivity, just purpose. If the answer is yes, honor that. If the answer is no, honor that too, and then start again with stillness. Because successful people don't chase more. They chase meaning. And meaning is found in the moments we stop long enough to feel it. They chase meaning, and meaning is found in the moments we stop long enough to feel it. Most people end their day with a list of things they didn't do. They lie in bed and scroll through their unfinished tasks like a failure report, thinking about the calls they didn't return, the emails left unopened, the goals they didn't hit. It's like they're closing the day in debt. Emotionally, mentally, sometimes even spiritually. They review their day through a lens of guilt. You see, the world teaches us to measure our value in volume, how many boxes we checked, how many hours we worked, how far we got on the ladder. But the people who consistently rise above, the ones we trust to lead and the ones we remember, they've flipped that script. They understand that success isn't about doing everything, it's about doing the right things. And knowing when to say, that was enough for today. And here's where it starts. Every night, before sleep, they take a moment not to count failures, but to notice wins. Small, human, quiet wins. Maybe they listened with full attention during a hard conversation. Maybe they made someone laugh. Maybe they took a step they've been avoiding. That's what they notice. That's what they hold on to. Because reflection doesn't have to be dramatic, it just has to be honest. And honesty begins with the question, what did I learn today? Not what did I achieve, or was I good enough, but what did this day teach me? That's where growth lives. In the reflection, in the noticing, in the gentle pause where we look at the day and decide not to punish ourselves, but to understand ourselves. People who lead well, who make an impact, who create environments of trust, they don't end their day by grinding themselves into the ground. They don't treat the unfinished as failure. They recognize the unfinished as inevitable. They don't expect perfection. They expect learning. And that subtle shift changes everything. Because here's what happens when you end your day with gratitude instead of guilt. Your nervous system settles. Your mind stops racing. You sleep deeper. You wake up clearer. You stop dragging yesterday's shame into tomorrow's possibility. And this isn't about ignoring what went wrong. It's about acknowledging it without being owned by it. The difference is subtle but powerful. Guilt says, you didn't do enough, you're not enough. Gratitude says, today wasn't perfect, but there's still something here to be thankful for. That's how strong people reflect, with compassion, not criticism. They review their day the way a great coach would review a game, not by obsessing over every missed shot, but by looking for moments of courage, teamwork, improvement. They ask, where did I stretch today? Where did I show up even when it was hard? What did I say no to so I could say yes to something that matters more? That's not weakness. That's leadership. Because when you lead yourself well, you give others permission to do the same. When you stop beating yourself up over the undone, you stop projecting that pressure onto others, your team feels it. Your family feels it. And most importantly, you feel it. In your body, in your heart, in the way you speak to yourself when no one's watching. And it doesn't require an hour-long journaling session or a 5-step ritual. Sometimes it's just 30 seconds before your head hits the pillow. You close your eyes and you ask, what's one thing I'm proud of today? And if the answer is, I kept going, that's enough. If the answer is, I paused when I needed to, that's enough. If the answer is, I tried again, that's enough. Because real success isn't loud. It doesn't always look like fireworks or standing ovations. Sometimes it looks like someone taking a deep breath and saying, I did my best today. That is strength. That is maturity. That is what the people we admire are made of. Not just ambition, but self-respect. And here's the thing. When you build the habit of reviewing your day with gratitude, you start to lead with gratitude too. You become someone who notices the effort, not just the result. You become someone who says, thank you for showing up, instead of only praising wins. And that changes culture. That builds trust. That creates spaces where people want to grow. Because people don't grow where they're constantly judged. They grow where they're seen, where progress is noticed, where small steps are celebrated. And that begins with how we treat ourselves. So, tonight, before the day slips away, try asking this, what did today teach me? And then listen, really listen. Let the answer rise up from a place deeper than guilt. And when it comes, write it down. Hold it in your heart. Whisper a thank you to the version of you that got through the day. Even if it was messy, even if it was hard. And if today was one of those days where nothing seemed to go right, where everything felt like a grind, those are the days when this practice matters the most. Because gratitude isn't just for good days, it's how we find good in the days that weren't. So remember this, successful people aren't immune to failure. They're just really good at finding meaning in the midst of it. And they do it night after night, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Because how you end your day is how you build your mindset. And your mindset is the foundation for everything else. Guilt will drain you, gratitude will fuel you. Choose the one that builds you. There's something powerful about ending your day with a look toward tomorrow. Not with anxiety, not with pressure, but with quiet clarity. With intention, successful people don't leave tomorrow up to chance. They don't just hope that the next day will go well. They design it, not through control, but through preparation, through presence. Before they rest, they plant a seed, a thought, a reminder. Here a question. They set tomorrow's intention tonight. This isn't about perfection. It's not about trying to squeeze more into the day. It's not about hustling until the last second. It's about giving the mind direction before it rests. It's about creating a sense of purpose before the noise returns. Think about it like this. Your mind is always running. Even when you sleep, your subconscious keeps processing. It's solving problems, sorting information, piecing together meaning. That's what dreams are, your brain trying to make sense of everything. And when you give it something meaningful to hold before you fall asleep, an intention, a question, a focus, you give your mind a compass, you give it direction. That's what successful people do. They ask better questions before bed. Not what did I screw up, but what can I do better tomorrow? Not how will I get everything done, but what matters most. That simple shift in questioning creates a different kind of mindset. It trades overwhelm for clarity. It replaces fear with focus. Sometimes setting an intention is as simple as writing down one line. Tomorrow, I will lead with calm. Or tomorrow, I will listen more than I speak. Or even tomorrow, I will take one small step. It doesn't have to be big to be powerful. In fact, the simpler the intention, the more effective it becomes. Because clarity isn't found in complexity. It's found in commitment. And that's what intention is, a commitment. Not to a task, but to a way of being, a way of showing up. The most impactful people aren't just those who do more. They're the ones who show up with purpose, who walk into a room already knowing what kind of energy they want to bring, who enter a meeting already grounded in who they want to be. That level of presence doesn't come from waking up and hoping for the best. It comes from deciding, before the day even begins, what matters. Here's the thing, we all have mornings where the alarm goes off and we're already behind. Emails, messages, obligations, it all hits us before we've had time to breathe. And on those days, intention becomes a lifeline. Because if you've already planted a clear purpose the night before, your day doesn't get hijacked by the urgent. You know what to return to, you know what matters. This is not about becoming rigid or overly structured. In fact, it's the opposite. When you start your day with intention, you become more adaptable. You respond instead of react. You make choices instead of running on autopilot. You lead instead of chase. Successful people don't always control their schedule, but they do control their presence. They might not know what the day will throw at them, but they know how they want to respond. That's the power of intention. It turns chaos into opportunity. It turns uncertainty into alignment. And it doesn't have to be written in stone. Intention can change, it should change, but it should always be yours, not someone else's expectations, not the world's idea of success, yours. The question is, what matters to you right now? What would it look like to end your day by answering that question? Sometimes the answer will be practical. Tomorrow I need to focus on this project. Other times it will be emotional. Tomorrow I want to show more patience. And sometimes it will be deeply personal. Tomorrow I want to reconnect with my purpose, with my people, with myself. That's not just productivity, that's leadership, leadership of the self. Because you can't lead others unless you're leading yourself first. And leading yourself means choosing your direction. Not drifting with the current, but steering with intention. There's something deeply human about taking a moment, just a moment, before bed to look forward. Not with stress, not with dread, but with hope. With a quiet reminder that tomorrow is not a problem to solve, it's a story you get to write. And how you begin that story starts with how you end this one. That's why the most grounded people protect their nighttime routines. Not because it's trendy, but because they understand that clarity doesn't begin in the morning. It begins in the night. The mind that sleeps with intention wakes up with focus. We often underestimate how much power lives in 5 quiet minutes. 5 minutes to breathe, to write, to reflect, to ask, how do I want to feel tomorrow? What kind of person do I want to be? Where do I want to lead from? And once you answer that, you've already started becoming it. There's no magic formula. You don't need a fancy planner or a color-coded calendar. You just need to care enough about your future to check in with it before you sleep. Successful people don't build intentional days by accident. They build them with choice, with clarity, with care. And it all begins the night before. So tonight, before you shut off the lights, ask yourself, not what you need to do, but who you want to be when you wake up. Hold that thought. Let it settle in. Let your mind carry it through the night. And when the sun rises, you won't just be starting another day, you'll be continuing a mission that began not in the rush of the morning, but in the quiet of your own intention. That's where success begins. That's where leadership begins. And that's where you begin again and again every single night. We live in a world that glorifies stimulation. Every second of our day is filled with something buzzing, flashing, talking, or demanding our attention. Our phones light up like slot machines. Notifications blink like tiny emergencies. We move from screen to screen like we're sprinting through an airport, always in motion, never quite arriving. And then the day ends. At least, that's what the clock says. But our minds don't get the memo. The body might stop, but the mind keeps going. And that's the problem. That's why so many people struggle with sleep, with focus, with burnout. It's not that they don't want to rest, it's that they don't know how to unplug. And unplugging is not just a wellness tip, it's a leadership move, a success move. Because successful people, truly successful people, aren't always the ones who work the longest hours or take the fewest breaks. They're the ones who understand the cost of being always on. They know that clarity, focus, and creativity are not born from nonstop stimulation. They are born from space, from silence, from boundaries. That's why they unplug. They don't do it to be trendy. They don't do it to follow some productivity guru's advice. They do it because they understand a fundamental truth. Your energy is your greatest resource. And your energy leaks through every open tab on your screen and in your mind. The best of the best have learned this. If you don't end your day with intentional disconnection, you don't actually rest. You just pause. And there's a big difference between rest and pause. A pause is temporary. It holds tension. You're still gripping the day even when you're not doing anything. Rest is release. Rest is surrender. And surrender requires safety, mental safety. You can't surrender to rest if you think you still have to respond, reply, react. And that's where the nighttime disconnection ritual comes in. It doesn't have to be dramatic. You don't need to throw your phone in a safe or delete every app. It's not about punishment. It's about permission. The permission to stop. The permission to step away from the noise, not just outside you, but inside you. Unplugging is a signal. It tells your mind, we're done now. It tells your nervous system, it's safe to relax. It tells your heart, you don't have to keep proving yourself today. And the people who embody calm confidence, the ones who walk into rooms without needing to dominate, the ones who hold presence without needing to shout, they carry that energy because they know how to disconnect. They know how to reset. They don't carry yesterday's weight into tomorrow's opportunity. They create a clean slate. Let me be clear, this isn't about ignoring responsibility. It's about knowing when enough is enough. The inbox will always be full. The to-do list will always grow. The algorithm will always have more content. The culture will always reward the busy. But your success will always suffer if you confuse activity with effectiveness. There is something radically powerful about being able to say, I'm off now. People might say, but I need to stay connected. What if something happens? What if I miss something important? And those are valid concerns. But the people who perform consistently at a high level, the ones who are relied upon, trusted, followed, they've discovered a deeper truth. If you're always available, you're never fully present. And presence always matters more than availability. Think about the people who made the biggest impact on your life. They weren't the ones who responded fastest. They were the ones who made you feel like nothing else mattered when they were with you. That's what disconnection makes possible, true presence when it matters most. And the irony is, the more you unplug, the more plugged in you become to what really matters, to your values, to your vision, to the people around you, to the future you're building. Because when you unplug from noise, you reconnect to meaning. So what does it look like in practice? For some, it's a tech-free hour before bed. For others, it's putting the phone in another room. For some, it's reading a real book, writing by hand, or just sitting in silence with a cup of tea. The method doesn't matter. The message does. I matter enough to stop. My mind matters enough to rest. My dreams matter enough to protect. And over time, this becomes more than a routine. It becomes an identity. You stop being someone who is ruled by urgency. You become someone who lives by intention. That's how you build trust, not just with others, but with yourself. Because every time you unplug at night, you're telling yourself, I can handle the world, but I'm not owned by it. That's leadership, that's maturity, that's power. And the ripple effects are real. You sleep better. You think clearer. You feel more grounded. You stop waking up in panic. You start waking up with purpose. You enter the day by choice, not by default. And that's the whole point. Unplugging at night is not about disconnecting from life. It's about reconnecting to it. The real life, the one where your thoughts are your own, where your mind gets space to breathe, where you're not reacting to every buzz or ping like a machine, but choosing what gets your attention like a leader. So tonight, before you crawl into bed with your phone in your hand, ask yourself, what am I feeding my mind right now? Is it making me better or just making me busy? Then take a breath. Set the phone down. Step away. You're not missing out. You're tuning in. And tomorrow when you wake up, you'll feel it, that clarity, that calm, that confidence. Because true success isn't just found in what you do, it's in what you choose to let go of. There's a difference between people who chase goals and people who build habits. One lives in reaction, the other lives in rhythm. One says, I'll do it when I feel like it. The other says, I'll do it because it matters even when I don't feel like it. And if there's one quiet, often overlooked nighttime routine that sets successful people apart, it's this. They protect their sleep, not out of laziness, but out of discipline. Not to escape the day, but to honor it. They treat sleep not as the absence of doing, but as the foundation of everything worth doing well. Because here's the truth, we don't hear often enough, rest is not the reward, rest is the requirement. We live in a world that celebrates the grind, where sleep is treated like a weakness, where we brag about staying up late and waking up early like exhaustion is some kind of badge of honor. But when you talk to people who lead with impact, who create, who build, who sustain excellence over time, they'll tell you something different. They'll tell you that sleep is sacred, that sleep is strategy. That sleep is the edge that no one talks about. Because when you are well rested, you don't just function better, you are better. You think clearer. You lead with more patience. You listen deeper. You respond instead of react. You make better decisions. And most importantly, you become the kind of person people want to follow. Calm, collected, clear. That kind of leadership doesn't come from sheer willpower. It comes from restoration. You can't give what you don't have. And sleep is the one investment that pays back in energy, clarity, and presence. The most successful people understand that. So they protect their sleep like they protect anything else of high value, not just by getting enough hours, but by building habits that lead them into it with intention. Because falling asleep isn't just about the time you close your eyes. It's about everything you do leading up to it. Your nighttime routine is not just a string of tasks, it's a transition from external to internal, from noise to quiet, from output to recovery. It's the moment where you tell your body and mind, you're safe now. You've done enough. It's time to rest. But most of us don't do that. Most of us crash into sleep like we crash into a couch. After a long day, exhausted, distracted, overstimulated, we carry our screens into bed. We scroll until our eyes are burning. And we wonder why we wake up tired, even after 8 hours, because it's not just the quantity of sleep that matters, it's the quality. And Quality begins with intention. That's why the people who lead well, live well, and sustain their energy over the long term, they have pre-sleep rituals that help them shift gears. It might be as simple as dimming the lights, or drinking a cup of tea, or reading a physical book, or doing some light stretching. But underneath those actions is a deeper principle: respect for the body, reverence for the mind. It's not about being rigid or perfect, it's about being consistent. It's about creating cues that remind the body what time it is. Not just chronologically, but biologically. Because your body is always listening, and when you speak to it with routine, it responds with restoration. You start to notice the shift. Your sleep becomes deeper. You wake up with more clarity. You stop needing 5 alarms and 3 cups of coffee just to feel human. And that changes how you lead, how you show up, how you relate. Because here's the thing, sleep doesn't just affect your energy, it affects your emotional regulation, your ability to handle pressure, your capacity to lead others through complexity. One good night's sleep can be the difference between snapping at your team or guiding them with calm, between missing a cue in conversation or hearing what wasn't said, between giving up on a hard task or finding the resilience to keep going. And this isn't just personal, it's relational. The people around you, your team, your family, your friends, they feel the effects of your rest or your lack of it. Sleep isn't selfish, it's service. When you take care of your body, you take care of the people you serve. But this takes a shift in mindset. You have to let go of the idea that sleeping is slacking. You have to stop believing that burnout is a badge. You have to trade urgency for sustainability. Trade the high of now for the strength of tomorrow. Because success isn't about how long you can go without rest. It's about how consistently you can show up fully rested. Not once in a while, but daily. Not just when it's convenient, but especially when it's not. So tonight, instead of pushing through one more email or one more episode, ask yourself a different question. What kind of leader do I want to be tomorrow? If the answer is one who leads with clarity, empathy, and strength, then the next right move might not be to do more, it might be to do less. To shut down the screen, to dim the lights, to breathe, to allow the body to restore. Because that's where tomorrow's leadership begins. Not in the rush of the morning, but in the stillness of the night. In the moment you choose to value your rest as much as you value your goals. Sleep isn't the opposite of ambition. It's what fuels it. It's not the end of productivity, it's the start of it. And the people who understand that, they're not just successful, they're sustainable. They don't just rise fast, they last. So take your sleep seriously. Protect it like a sacred appointment. Build the routine that calms your system and clears your mind. And when you close your eyes, do it with pride, not because you did everything, but because you did enough. And tomorrow, when the world calls for your attention again, you'll rise not just with energy, but with intention. Not just with motion, but with meaning. And that's the kind of success that endures.